First, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And shout out to Yakim that's out there pushing this truth on the four corners of the earth. Today's video lesson is just going to be really short on another musician that I happen to listen to, who happens to also be a Confusion of Faith Israelite. Of course, I'm talking about Frank Zappa. And you can hear him in the background. Now, he was like a prince. Like princes. In fact, Prince was influenced by Frank Zappa. You know, because Frank Zappa didn't just know one instrument, but he knew how to create music and put it all together. Well, that's sort of what the House of David is, you know, because one of the first things that he took care of was putting together the music. Having the best musicians, you know, because pretty much he was the chief musician, so he had the best in the house. Well, that's sort of what Frank Zappa was. But you'll figure out that he's a Confusion of Faith Israelite. He also, would put out catchy titles like "Have I Offended Someone?" or "You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore." And he was very anti-censorship. He was like he was like having the comedian George Carlin and Prince together. Pretty much, you have a good musician and you have somebody that knew how to be funny too, And again, "Titties and Beer" was another song, So he had very catchy titles. But most of all, he was a critical thinker, and that's what Esau hates, is when we can critically think for ourselves. And I will show you his interviews, and you will see what I mean about him being a Confusion of Faith Jake. Because, like everything else, though, what he did know about his heritage, that it goes back to being Sicilian. Well, we were in Sicilia, Italy, the Sicily part, and that, we were there just like we were there in England. We're pretty much all around the world, so Confusion of Faces will come out of these nations. So, I just thought that, I just kind of show you how he thought and everything. And again, not saying that you have to like him. Everybody is into their own music and all that, but some things he goes a little off on. But at the same time, though, he makes his point, especially about nuclear war. He doesn't think that there's ever going to be a nuclear war, but the threat of it, and then the fact that they can make bombs just to destroy things and all that, and leave the structure, to leave the businesses and all that. He doesn't know the end-all war, that would be there. And they killed him. They killed him just like they did Prince. They killed him because he was getting way too much attention. So they killed him off in the 90s. Just like they killed Prince off. But they didn't kill Prince off right away. Because the interview that everybody knows about with Prince was in 2010 when he released the album Lotus Flower and he talked about the chemtrails. But they wouldn't kill him off until 2016. Because they decided to do their sacrifices. But I'll let you hear a little bit of what he sounded like here, because his music's really good. And he also played with all the musicians like Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd. Again, it depends on what kind of music you're into. That's neither here or there, but just most of the music talent comes from Jake. Because that's how the House of David was set up. That's the way it was set up then, and that's the way it's being built up now. So, it's just my opinion also that John Lennon was also a Confusion of Faith Israelite just because of the way he thought. That only a Jake would think that way, not an Edomite. Definitely not these other nations. These other nations are not that smart. Not as smart as a Jake. Jake excels in everything. So anyhow, I'll just move you on to now some of the clips of Frank Zappa being the critical thinker and why the Illuminati killed him.
Why don't you sit down and write a top 40 hit song sometime?
Could do it if I wanted, but even if I did, the chances of it getting played on a top 40 radio station are not very good.
Why is that?
Because of the attitudes of programmers, and there's a certain political rigmarole that one must go through in order to have the top 40 record, including special types of presents to certain people in the industry, and that's something that I don't wish to be involved in.
point? Do you think rock and roll is still for people who are simply cute?
It's more for people who are cute now than it ever was before, because it's virtually impossible to get a record contract if you look, anywhere between normal and ugly. You may play great and sing great, but if you're not cute, you can't get a contract now because it's the world of videos. It's easier to get a contract now if you can't sing and you can't play, but you look good, because they can always hire somebody to sing your song for you. You've seen that happening over and over and over again. Every hit that you hear on the record, on the radio, who's really singing it? Who's doing it? Because the person that you see in the video is dancing and looking good with nice clothes and everything, and it's all fake.
Oh, come on.
But it's really depressing. If you stop and think about trying to get people to pay attention to what the government is doing or actually taking some personal involvement in it, it's hopeless, because even if you got them to register, they don't know enough about what's going on to make a decision after they've registered. So maybe it's for the best if they don't register.
So how do they become more informed? I mean, become a news addict like you? And that news is so skewed anyway.
Well, I'm watching the same skewed news that's available to everybody else. I don't have any kind of secret information that comes filtering into my house. But what I've learned to do over the years is subtract the spin. And so if you flip from channel to channel and see the different ways the story is covered, you can average it out and get some idea of what's going on. And then the fact that certain stories are reported at all is very suspicious. And you learn to spot these, why are they talking about this? For people who need to be entertained, okay, it's doing its job, but I have a different view of music. I think that it has an aesthetic importance that goes beyond chart placement. And the business of music is all about this fake list of who sold what. And the whole idea of selling large numbers of items in order to determine whether or not the item has any quality to it is what's really repulsive about it. And the function that is required of you as a musician in the United States basically is please be a jukebox. I mean, it's not even please, just be a jukebox. We want you to play whatever it is you just put out on your record, and we want it to sound just like the record. And so this desire on the part of the audience to have live in-person replication of freeze-dried material is one of the forces that led to the Milli Vanilli-ism that we now see, because a lot of the contemporary albums, you can't play it live. You have to just have a track playing in the background and fake it.
Musicians will always make music. However, the people who make records are not always musicians. Sometimes they're just plain show people. Or in the case of some of the punk groups, they're guys off the street that were gathered together by a boutique owner. The fact of the matter is that advertised properly, people will buy anything. See? And now that the lesson of punk has been learned, that you can sell anything to anybody, there's no telling what the next trend will be.
As a musical reporter, how do you feel about the, I'm scared to, about the music industry as a whole? Because I mean, you have had a good time making a good living at the music industry.
Well, let's talk about the music industry for a moment.
Okay.
The important word here is industry, not music. That's the key word. It's very big, and it's very powerful, and the bigger it gets and the more powerful it gets, the more appealing it becomes to people in government, because they see a vehicle by which they can reach a younger age voter group. And so we have situations like people who want to run for office approaching people who are in the music business to either donate their services for concerts or to endorse candidates. It started to happen during the last bunch of elections, and I'm sure it's going to happen a lot during the next bunch of elections, and every time you see a political figure in the presence of a person from the music business or from television or from the movies, you should smell a rat and get away from it.
You mean because you think they've been paid off to support that person, or perhaps they have convictions in that area?
There are very few times that I can imagine where convictions will play a part in it, and many times where there is pressure put on the artist, especially in terms of recording artists, where this joining of forces between the music people and the political people are to the advantage of both parties.
But now you come back to that very word that Ren used, power.
What about the music of today? What direction is it going in?
It's going to the bank.
Is that a creative assessment? Is that good for music?
It's not good for music, but the accountants love it.
Mm-hmm. How about radio?
Same thing.
Are you at all embittered by the fact that the same people get played on commercial radio?
I don't listen to the radio.
So you have nothing to be...
You guys shouldn't either. There's nothing in it for you.
What about television? Watch much television?
No. I like the news. I watch CNN most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Does the news ever get you down? I mean, that's not a...
No, I like to watch the news because I don't like people very much, and when you watch the news, if you ever had an idea that people were really terrible, you can watch the news and know that you're right.
Let's talk about things on television. CNN. What do you think of CNN?
I started watching CNN when you didn't have to pay for it. Now they're scrambling it and you have to pay to see all this right-wing hogwash they have. But CNN started off as a very good idea. You could see news all the time, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it started going more and more and more to the right. And I think that right now, in order to watch CNN and extract news, you have to read between the lines so much and filter out all the speculation that they included in the news stories. I mean, showing the pictures and telling people what happened, cut and dried, that's the news. Yeah. But when you force a person who is a participant in the news story to speculate on what it really means, I think that's pushing it, and they stay on that stuff too much.
Now, I've actually seen you on CNN.
Yeah, sure, I've been on there. In fact, they interviewed me the other day. I put a thing in my book about CNN and how I think they've gone down the tubes, and they interviewed me about that, and I told the same thing to them. Yeah. Well, let me give you an example of a CNN technique. Okay, once upon a time, there was a news story that was announced by the anchor like this. Dan Quayle will now be involved more in government policy-making decisions. So what do we see for videotape? Here's George Bush. He's wearing a white shirt, he's got his sleeves rolled up, he's holding a box of popcorn. And he's in a movie theater. And behind him, in the darkness, is Dan Quayle, walking around like a little clone in the background. And right behind George Bush is Dan Aykroyd and Kim Basinger. And obviously they are at the premiere of a movie called My Stepmother is an Alien. Now, this is a Weintraub Entertainment Group film. And Mr. Weintraub and Mr. Bush are friends. I did some research. I found out how this story came about. George called Weintraub and said, "Do you have a movie?" He needed a little promotional thing to stick on the air. This is obviously a plug for a movie, and it's introduced as a story about Dan Quayle. Now that's an abuse of the news, I think.
Schools train people to be ignorant with style. They give you the equipment that you need to be a functional ignorance. American schools do not equip you to deal with things like logic. They don't give you the criteria by which to judge between good and bad in any medium or format. And they prepare you to be a usable victim for a military-industrial complex that needs manpower. As long as you're just smart enough to do a job and just dumb enough to swallow what they feed you, you're going to be all right. But if you go beyond that, you're going to have these grave doubts that give you stomach problems, headaches, make you want to go out and do something else. So I believe that schools mechanically and very specifically try and breed out any hint of creative thought in the kids that are coming up.
My idea of a good time is the biggest problem facing the world today is mental health. If everybody had good mental health, then all the other problems would be solved. Because in order to take care of mechanical and practical problems, you have to have good mental health in order to attack those problems. If people have motives that are not worthwhile, then those bad motives are always going to creep into their activities. Then you see that every day from the way the political people work. If people were just in a position to have their minds functioning right, then everything else would fall into line. Now that's what I'm after. That's my dream. Now that's a dream. That's probably not going to happen, but that's my dream.
Politics is the entertainment branch of industry. They do more to entertain us than to serve us. It seems that the problem with government as an institution is uniformly bad worldwide. It may be the only thing that binds all nations together is the incompetence of all of their government.
Go back to the 60s. 1968, the assassination of Martin Luther King. And I appreciate if you could use their names in the answers, your memories.
Yes, I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and it was just another one of those things that made me worry about the sanity of the people in this country and the sanity of the policies and why something like that should have to happen. Any kind of an assassination, it's just so pew.
And that was April, and then in June, Bobby Kennedy is assassinated.
Yeah, it looked like a trend, didn't it?
Maybe using the Kennedy assassination as an interesting answer.
Well, then you get the Bobby Kennedy assassination. It starts to look like a trend. I mean, anybody who thinks that these were isolated incidents, you know, just isolated crackpots, you know, I see a trend. I see a mysterious hand behind all of this. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I think that it's been the idea that the possibility that certain types of conspiracies have existed in American politics, just because they've existed before, would allow you to project that they could continue to exist to this day.
The unions are the mafia, which is the CIA, which is the Catholic Church, which is the government, which is, what's the difference? It's corrupt. It's the same guy pulling these strings, you know, and then one day he pulls a string and boom, this lamp comes out. You know, the next day he pulls a string and there's a missile coming out. Maybe it's a little late for some of you to know that there is some sort of strange national effort to bring censorship to first the rock and roll industry, then to the video industry, then the National Council of Churches wants to have ratings on normal television programming, then it'll get to books, and then it'll get to any kind of sign you want to carry around the street, and then you'll all be wearing the same colored clothes. And I don't think you're all going to learn how to speak Chinese, but I think that they all want you to sort of worship the same God. What I suspect is that because rock and roll music reaches so many different people, and it does reach them on a repetitive level, and it does form an important part of their life, if you can control that medium, you are going to be able to control the ideas which go out to those young people. And there are some people who don't want to have young people thinking too much, because you got to keep them really stupid to buy certain products and to vote for certain people.
And you're a very intelligent man. Is there any way, however, by which you can come a step or two in Kennedy Stroud's direction without feeling that you've lost all your credentials?
You know, it's not a matter of credentials, it's a matter of sanity, because what they're proposing is so pitifully, well, it's dangerous besides being pitiful.
What is dangerous about a packaging label? What's dangerous about having...
No, it's the tactics that you're using. Look, first of all, the first time I debated you, they chopped the debate up, and I'm glad to be able to do it without editing, all right? Now, I want to say one thing to anybody who wants to know what they're really doing here. This is supposed to go to a fact-finding committee in Congress on Thursday, right? The chairman of the committee has a wife on the PMRC. There's 2 senators on the committee that have wives in the PMRC. I called the PMRC office today to ask the question, who else belongs to the PMRC? And you know what the answer was? We don't have any members. We only have founders. And then I said, I have your fundraising letter. When they gave you your tax-free number, what kind of an organization was it? Is it a cult? What do you got here? What is going on?
You know, I'd just like to comment at this point that one of the founding members of the group is Tipper Gore, the wife of Senator Albert Gore, who happens to be the co-sponsor of the legislation against anti-piracy laws for the music industry. Senator Gore is on the side of the music industry, okay? So, I mean, I don't think that there's any kind of...
I don't speak for the music industry. I'm a parent who is concerned about his children and the First Amendment. The music industry has sold out the singers, the songwriters, and the retailers by bending over for you guys and voluntarily putting on any kind of a sticker.
Let me just say something about that, Ted and Frank.
And incidentally, Donnie, if you want to get in on this, you've got to push her.
Could I make a statement about national defense?
Yeah.
The biggest threat to America today is not communism. It's moving America toward a fascist theocracy. And everything that's happened during the Reagan administration is steering us right down that pipe.
Oh, Mr. Zappa,
Yes, Mr. Zappa.
I believe that AIDS in reality is not a natural accident. It's not a natural disease that just sort of evolved. Somebody cooked it up. I think that it's something that either escaped from a genetic engineering laboratory or something that was manufactured on purpose in a genetic engineering laboratory to somebody's specifications. I also believe that all the warfare of the future will be conducted with these biological agents, because now the gene splicing is a thing that can be done. It is feasible to consider the preparation of certain diseases which will kill only specific races, nationalities, or people with certain interests, because you can tailor the disease to attack certain things in certain categories.
Well, these are very serious allegations, Frank. I mean, what actually makes you believe this? Do you have hard and fast evidence that this is the case, or is it just something that you've theorized?
No, this is just the opinion of an aging buffoon. You know, just think nothing of it.
You think that possibly America or any other country in the world could increase its power and its standing internationally by actually utilizing these agents?
Let's look at the world the way it really is. Government is a joke. Governments don't do anything. That's like a cardboard cutout that hides where the real machinery is. The world is a place that does business. The world is run by multinational businesses that mostly sell weapons to each other. And then you have sugar business, oil business, coal business, you know, business. And when the guys who run these things say jump, all governments jump. And it's foolish to consider the possibility of nuclear war because from a business standpoint, it's impractical. It stops all business. So, the way you have to look at it is the chances are much more likely that the sales will continue of missile delivery systems, but what will be in the warheads will not be things that destroy real estate. It's much more practical to think of missiles going someplace and putting out chemicals or microbes that enable the one party to subjugate the other party by controlling its labor force while leaving the buildings intact. So you've subjugated them and now you got a bonus, you have their machinery, you got this, you got that. And I believe that there's somebody sitting in an office someplace that's working on it, and that's the practical way to do it. You can scream about nuclear war and you have people running around with signs and stuff like that, but I don't believe there will ever be a nuclear war because it's just impractical from a business sense. Meanwhile, the companies that are building delivery systems are making plenty of money, billions of dollars, because the money goes into small arms delivery systems, medium-sized arms. Their commerce is still going on, and that's why they're alive. That's what they love to do.
An old generation is wasted. Sure, they're wasted. Their parents are wasted. Their brothers and sisters are wasted. Their mothers are wasted. Nobody wants to deal with reality because reality has gotten to be too disgusting. We're on our way into the Dark Ages again. That's what we're looking at right now. It's not just 1984. We're looking at something that is going to make the first Dark Ages seem like a company picnic. Because there's just so many more utensils that can be used to keep the population in the dark and stupid and under control. And it's not good.
It's not important to even be remembered. I mean, the people who worry about being remembered are guys like Reagan, Bush. These people want to be remembered. And they'll spend a lot of money and do a lot of work to make sure that remembrance is just terrific. I don't care.